before we start. Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Wow. It's great to see all the visitors this morning. I appreciate you coming out. I would encourage you to stick around after and let us get to know you. I tell you, every Sunday, I try not to give away my lesson in the Bible study. You guys have a knack for it because we always somehow end up hitting on it. And I was sure this Sunday that we weren't going to get to it, but that's okay. I should just encourage everyone who's not coming to Bible study to get a sneak preview before we get there for the lesson. You know, I tell you, there's nothing more gratifying than looking out, and I see so many souls that have made that journey to the water, who have gone down into that watery grave of baptism and put on Christ and came up new. And it's just, there's just nothing better in life, than watching someone with full knowledge of their sin confess the glory of Jesus and give themselves over to be buried in that. I mean, it's just really a great opportunity, and I've had the opportunity to do that to a few of you here, and that's a wonderful time, and I'm sure others who have been before me. So most of us have taken that journey to the water. Now, I'm not going to give a typical lesson on baptism this morning. We all can use a lesson on baptism always, of course, but I'm not going to give your typical lesson on baptism. I'm going to talk a little bit more about your journey, those of us, because I know quite a few people in here, those of us who have made that journey to the water. I'd imagine, and I kind of have a question. How many of us made that journey completely alone? Bible class, we kind of already did this morning. Just completely and utterly alone. I mean, I'm talking about, and I'll even use, just went into a dark place by yourself, came out and just found the first person and said, look, you need to baptize me right now. Probably not many, if anyone in here, did it completely alone. I imagine there were others that were kind of along the way to enlighten us, to teach us, to listen to us and to love us. Sister Amy brought up a great point in Bible class this morning. Not everybody, there's a lot of babes that need the milk. They're just not ready. There's things that they don't understand. And so it takes that mature, meat-eating Christian, the one who has been here a while and done their studying and grown and been fruitful, as Brother Kerr mentioned, and really grown in that. And it kind of takes that. So I'll bet that pretty much everyone in this room, had someone, be it your mom, your dad, your best friend, whatever it was, to talk to them, to talk to you, and help you, and enlighten you, and be there for you. So the thing is, and what I'm asking this group of people here this morning, is, we have an obligation, okay? We have an obligation, and as I look around the room, I see a lot of those who have taken that journey to the water. Maybe it was a time ago now. You might be getting a little mature. You might be sitting there and you've done this for a while. And so we have an obligation to reach more people. We're starting this new thing. We're just starting with the groups in the back. With writing cards and making sure we're staying on top of our visitors and staying on top of those who might have missed last week due to physical illness or maybe possibly spiritual. So we need to reach more people. So I want to see this Church of Christ here on Mariner Boulevard. I want to see it grow this year more than ever. Okay, that is our goal. That's what we're here to do, and that's what we want to do. We want to see this church, or any local church, we want to spread that gospel. We want to see it grow. So I want to talk to you this morning about some roles that we can play. Okay? Roles that we must play. Again, it was mentioned this morning about being fruitful in the kingdom. That's not just something that we just have a choice of doing. It's not just something that we teach the kids not to hide your light. There's the song, and they hide it under a bushel nut. And we have an obligation to spread that gospel, to be fruitful for God as commanded. So we have to play that role. We have to help more people find Christ. Now, we don't save souls, and I'll explain a little bit more of that. You know that God saves souls, okay? I mean, and we don't have that. Souls save themselves by coming to God, but the efforts of Christians along the way very much determine whether that soul and God come together. A lot of times. It takes that commitment up front. We know that. It takes that commitment from that person, but we have a play in this. So, we're going to explore this morning the roles we can play to connect people to God and maybe issue some energizing and challenges that help us go about this. So I want everyone to turn with me to 1 Corinthians chapter 3. This is where we'll begin this morning. For the visitors here, I tell you, if you see the PowerPoint's not where it should be, if we're not on the right slide, I apologize. You might just want to follow along in your Bibles. I encourage you to do that. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 5 through 9. Who then is Paul and who is Apollos? But ministers through whom you believe, as the Lord gave to each one. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So then, neither he who plants is anything, nor he who waters, but God who gives the increase. Now he who plants and he who waters are one, and each one will receive his own reward according to his own labor. For we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field. You are God's building. So again, that's just kind of reiterating, not about us. Okay? It's not about you, not about me. God, that's God's job. Well, I mean, not his job, but that's who he is. God saves souls, so it's not about us. But God needs us, needs his one body, that fold, to work through us to bring souls, or to uplift souls, to guide them. And this morning, I hope you have your Old Testaments with you. There is a story we're going to read. We're going to read a story, and we're going to turn over to 2 Kings. 2 Kings chapter 5. And if you're following along in your pew Bibles, that'll be on page 573 in your pew Bibles. 573. Alright, this story is about a guy named Naaman. A guy named Naaman. And I think this might, I don't want to do too much interjecting here. I'm going to read this as a whole because I think that's the best way to read it. And then we'll pull some things out of it and we'll make a few applications, maybe tying it to some New Testament people. So I'm going to go ahead in 2 Kings chapter 5. I'm going to read verses 1 through 14. This has a lot to do with what we're talking about. It might be a little small and I'll filter up there. I'll try to keep you going along. Now, Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great and honorable man in the eyes of his master, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. He was also a mighty man of valor, but a leper. And the Syrians had gone out on raids and had brought back a captive young girl from the land of Israel. She waited on Naaman's wife. Then she said to her mistress, "If only my master were the prophet who is in Samaria, for he would heal him of leprosy." And Naaman went in and told his master, saying, "Thus and thus said the girl who is from the land of Israel." Then the king of Syria said, "Go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel." So he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. Then he brought the letter to the king of Israel, which said, "Now be advised, when this letter comes to you, that I have sent Naaman, my servant, to you, that you may heal him of leprosy." And it happened when the king of Israel read the letter that he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God to kill and make alive, that this man sends a man to me to heal him of his leprosy? Therefore, please consider and see how he seeks a quarrel with me." So it was then when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, that he sent to the king, saying, "Why have you torn your clothes? Please let him come to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel." Then Naaman went with his horses and chariot, and he stood at the door of Elisha's house. And Elijah sent a messenger to him, saying, "Go and wash in the Jordan 7 your flesh shall be restored to you, and you shall be clean. But Naaman became furious and went and said, Indeed, I said to myself, he will surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and wave his hand over the place and heal the leprosy. Are not the Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? But he turned and went away in rage. And his servants came near, spoke to him, and said, My father, if the prophet had told you to do something great, would you not have done it? How much more then, when he says to you, Wash and be clean? So he went down and dipped 7 times in the Jordan, according to the sayings of the man of God, and his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. Wow. What a pretty amazing story. We probably have heard that story maybe, oh, see, I told you. That was the thing, we missed a lot up there. We probably have heard that stories in Bible classes, in the back. I remember growing up hearing that. And the story of Naaman being cleansed of leprosy. So, there's a lot of different characters. I don't know if you caught them. A lot of different characters that are playing their role in this. Okay? A lot of different people that have a hand in this and a hand in what's kind of going on here. And I want to kind of make a few applications of that this morning. Who was the first one? So the story of Naaman, the first person we should probably mention is Naaman. Okay? Naaman is probably our first guy we need to talk about here. You know, what was Naaman? Man, he had leprosy. Okay? Naaman was a man who apparently in the beginning, because it mentions in verses 1 through 2, who was a man of God. He'd done some acts for God. Okay? And so we recognize that. And he was a pretty high up guy. He was pretty high up. So he came, and we find a few verses later that he had leprosy. Now, I'm not going to go into how bad leprosy was. Okay? Leprosy back then was, I'm talking body rotting, just hurting all the time. It was highly contagious, and most of the time, almost every time, you died from it. You know, this was not something that was joyous to have. Okay, this was a pretty bad ordeal for them at this time. So we see Naaman. Now Naaman comes and says what? I have a problem. I need a solution. Okay? I have a problem. I got to get this figured out. I got to get it fixed. And so there were many things that Naaman did not know. There were a lot of things Naaman did not know. Who would heal him exactly? You know, there's just this girl, little servant girl, that just comes and starts mentioning that. We'll talk about her later. But he didn't know who was even going to heal him or how he would be healed. But he understood and accepted he had a deadly disease. Okay? He had a deadly disease. He was willing to take a chance and find a solution. He was willing to pay a great price to be healed, and he got over himself. Late in the story, you guys remember, he kind of got a little hesitant about it all. He got over himself late in the story and ended up cleansing himself of his leprosy. So, what's the point of that? Now where I get it. I'm talking about you. Now that was Naaman's journey to the water. Where's us? Okay. My point in mentioning that, and we talked about it some in Bible study this morning. This is not a role that you play. Okay. Naaman's role in this story, now it might have been a role that you played at once, and I'm talking again to those of us who made the journey to the water. This was a role that you played at once. But you cannot help someone who does not want to be saved. Okay. It's hard. Someone who just simply, this is a role they have to take on themselves. Okay, we talked about it. The church is a hospital, man. It really is. And it takes that Acts 2, those 3,000, saying, man, we're in trouble. We have to get out of this. Again, guess what? If that servant girl would have said, hey, Naaman, looks like you have a real bad case of leprosy. And Naaman would have just been like, nope, I don't have one. I don't have any leprosy. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm perfectly fine. You know, and at the same time, his skin's just falling off of him. You know, you can't help that. That's not something. So they must accept that they will die without finding the grace of God. They must be willing to step out of their comfort zone. They have to be willing to pay a price. They must be willing to get past their bias. Man, that's a hard thing, guys. I'm still working on it all the time. Get past that bias, that just me. You know, that me monster. And understand their ideas to find salvation. You can't do this for them. You cannot make people see their condition and understand the distance that they have from God. So you cannot save people who do not accept that they have a problem and need a solution. I have an example. Turn with me to John, the Gospel book of John. John, we'll read chapter 9, verses 39 through 41. That's on page 655 if you're following along in your P Bibles. If I can get over here too. John chapter 9. John chapter 9, we see Jesus healed a blind man at the beginning of this. Okay, you can read a little bit earlier on in the chapter, and there was a blind man, and Jesus came in and healed him, and he received his sight again, and it was fantastic. But here's the thing: Jesus didn't come to heal a bunch of blind guys. He didn't do it. And now he used this. He used this, and it was a great event. But Jesus did not come to do these physical miracles. What we see later on in John chapter 9, read with me in verse 39 through 41. And Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into this world, that those who do not see may see, and that those who see may be made blind." Then some of the Pharisees who were with him heard these words, and said to him, "Are we blind also?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you say, 'We see,' therefore your sin remains." That's the point. You catch that? Dude, those Pharisees, man, those were rascally guys. But that's where Jesus was. That's what he came to do. Not heal the blind. I mean, yeah, he did it. He did a lot of miraculous things. And it was wonderful. But that's not what he came here to do. Now, here's the thing. I know what you're thinking. I got no problem. It's just up to God, and I'll just kind of go through and pull one of those, just kind of, sorry, that most people don't want to be saved. I think the world's just getting so out of hand, guys. And I know it's just getting harder and harder to talk to people about God. In some ways, yeah, it's true, but we're still expecting it. Okay? So this isn't just a free card of, oh boy, just a lot of blind people that don't want to be saved. What do we do about that? Where's our role in this? Well, you can turn over with me to Acts chapter 27. Sometimes it just takes this to just kind of get the ball rolling and everything. Acts 27, verses 28 through 29. "And they took soundings and found it to be 20 fathoms. And when they had gone a little farther, they took soundings again and found it to be 15 fathoms. Then fearing lest we should run aground on the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for day to come." The last part. And pray for day to come. Sometimes, guys, again, if someone doesn't want to be saved, it's hard. Someone who just says, "I'm already good, I don't have anything I need to do, I want to die like this." They can pray. We have that relationship with God. We have that. Maybe you're seeing that they're going to run on the ground, run up against the rocks. Prayer has to be part of our lives. Prayer has to be in that to where we feel comfortable talking to our Father about some situations. Because again, we have an obligation to those people. Did you know God wants them? God wants them. And it has to be done. So maybe we take that opportunity to pray for them. Pray for understand their condition and seek healing. You know, might be the best opportunity at that time. Because then, we come along to our second point. Okay? We come along to what we have next. Second character I want to point out in the story we read. Servant girl. Okay? She wasn't given a name. I like that. I like it used as the servant girl. You know, what was the servant girl's job? I tell you what. You know what the Mariner Church of Christ needs? A bunch of little service girls. Really. And Stephen, he's a big guy. And I mean, he's a big man. Stephen needs to be a service girl. I mean, you know, really. We need a bunch of servant girls. Because see, here's what happened. The servant girl says this. I know where you can go to find God. You know, I know where, I mean, it was simple as that. She didn't know much. Guys, she didn't know much. There's much that she just had no real clue about. I mean, she was just a young servant girl. That was it. She didn't know a lot. Maybe the identity of the prophet or the specific means by which Naaman could be saved. She didn't know anything. But this girl made the whole story possible. She made the whole story possible. You know why? She said, hey, I want to go check that out. You know, you look like you have a problem, and there's a solution, and I know where you can go to get it. You know, I know this. Sometimes we get very intimidated. You know, we talked about some babes in Christ, and they're still on the mill. You know, I mean, and that's fine. Maybe you're not where, you know, as far as long as some of these other more mature Christians. Maybe you have a little room to grow. But I tell you what you can be is the servant girl. Does that make sense? You know, I tell you where you can have an opportunity of, hey, look, you know, you don't have to know. And it can be intimidating. I get it. Been there. It can be intimidating going and having that meeting. You know, having that Bible study. Maybe I don't know enough. You know, I tell you, that's usually, most of the time, I tell you, people are afraid to ask people to come to about having a Bible study because they're afraid they're going to say yes. You know, they're afraid on that off chance that somebody might just be like, no, I can't do it right now, that they may be like, yeah, when and where. You know, and sometimes that's okay. It takes those servant girls. Guys, I tell you what, we have pamphlets in the back. You know, we have things that we can be doing. You don't have to, that doesn't take any knowledge or any part of your time. All it takes is pointing in the right direction. Sometimes that's all it is. You know, Amy brought up again, that was a perfect segue into this morning in the Bible study. It's all it took. Sometimes it just takes that pointing in the right direction. And that's what that servant girl did. She saw a man she had no reason to love. No reason to love him. She'd been taken captive. She'd been taken captive. And you know, I'm sure she was from Israel, so she probably had a little experience with you know, God and kind of knowing. But she expressed that there was someone in Samaria who could help him. And she isn't named here, but I tell you, she is the hero of Naaman's life. Did we just draw that connection? Not even named here. She's the hero of his life. That one little servant girl. So, again, Mariner, we need a bunch of little servant girls. We need a bunch of that. You know, maybe you're not confident in teaching the gospel to someone yet. Maybe the idea of sitting with them and studying is a little too difficult, but I can tell you, you can tell them where to go. You can help them with that. You can point someone in the right direction. It might just be handing out cards of sermons. Giving them a pamphlet to come visit. That's what our obligation is. The story kind of reminds me of another, and I told you we're going to make some New Testament applications with each of these as we go along. Turn with me to John chapter 4. John chapter 4. In John 4, we see another girl, a woman, who was standing by the well, and Jesus asked her, she was a Samaritan, and Jesus asked her for some water. Okay? Read with me in 27 through 29. 4:27 through 29. And at this point his disciples came, and they marveled that he talked with a woman. Yet no one said, "What do you seek?" or "Why are you talking with her?" The woman then left her water pot, went her way into the city, and said to the men, "Come, see a man who told me all the things that I ever did. Could this be the Christ?" Then they went out of the city and came to him. Isn't that pretty amazing? Because she didn't even know exactly if she was even speaking to Christ at this point. I mean, she just knew this guy's somebody we need to listen to. This is it. He's just someone we need to take account of. And I think you need to go check him out. I think you need to go to have a listen. And guess what? People did. And I know it just sounds so silly, but sometimes it's just as simple as, "Hey, have you tried this? Have you checked this out? Here's an opportunity." You give them a card. It can be as simple as that, and you can be the hero of that person's life. Now again, I'm not saying you're going to save, we know that God saves souls, but you can save their life. Pretty incredible. By being just simply a servant girl, or the woman by the well, whichever you prefer. So, again, there's another character here. Oh, if I can get it up there. We saw the king. The king, he got sent to the wrong guy, I tell you. And then when the king received that letter, he tore his clothes. Man, it stressed him out. And, sometimes that can be us too, just feeling a little overwhelmed. And it just really stressed him out. And he just really couldn't handle it. But, I tell you what else we need. We need a bunch of servant girls. And then we need, it's off the screen, so. We need an Elijah. Not an Elijah, but we need some Elishas. Some of those guys who, listen to me, I know what you need. I got help for you. I know God's way for you. Again, those are those mature ones. Those Christians that have been eating the meat for a while now. You need to get to that point. Because I tell you, if you want growth, which we do, it takes this. If you want to be those Christians in Acts 2, late Acts 2, and multiplying daily, it's going to take this. We need some Elishas. At some point, somebody has got to know the answers. And be bold enough to share them. I tell you what, I hope we have a bunch of bold Christians here. People who, when they see the right thing to do, they don't hesitate to do it. It can be a challenge. I tell you, sometimes you don't like stepping in and saying, "Look, maybe you're on the wrong path." And of course, we know, guys, there's ways of love to do this. Within a loving way, and I hope everything we do here is loving, because at that point, I'm not giving that sermon right now. But maybe you're on the right path or wrong path. Let me help you. I know through experience or whatever it might be, I know God's way, and I know how we can get through this together. It takes that to build a church. Elijah didn't shy away from, even this dangerous man. He was a leper. He knew the truth, and he shared it. And he wasn't silenced by fear, and he wasn't motivated by greed. There was nothing besides he just spoke for God, and he told Naaman God's will to save him. That was it. And people who say you really need to visit church, or you've got to meet our preacher, or check out our website, go and see, come and see, those are important people. Those servant girls or guys are important people. But that's not everyone's role. It can't be everyone's role. We also need an Elisha in our midst. People who are willing to say, "I can see you yearning for the truth, man. I see it. You're seeking. And let me help you. Let me show you what I know and show you what I can do." And maybe it's in a 4-lesson book. Or maybe it's from Romans 6. Romans 6. Go through the book of Acts. We need that. It's how we're going to grow. Turn with me to Acts chapter 9. Acts chapter 9. Told you we're going to make application, and I really, my man Ananias. Okay? My man Ananias in Acts chapter 9, what boldness Ananias had. Because you knew who Ananias was sent to go see. Ananias was sent to go see a guy from the land of Tarsus named Saul. Okay? And we all know him as Paul, and boy, we love Paul, but let me tell you, you didn't want to cross Saul's path as a Christian, before this conversion here. So, boy, Ananias, we can use him and Elisha kind of here together. We're going to read, do I have them all up here? Yeah, we do. We're going to read 9 through 15 in chapter 9. In Acts chapter 9, we'll read 9 through 15. And he was 3 days without sight, neither ate nor drank. That's Saul. Now there was a certain disciple at Damascus named Ananias. And to him the Lord said in a vision, Ananias? And he said, Here I am, Lord. So the Lord said to him, Arise and go to the street called Straight, and inquire at the house of Judas for one called Saul of Tarsus. For behold, he is praying, and in a vision he had seen a man named Ananias coming in and putting his hand on him, so that he might receive his sight. Then Ananias answered him, Lord, I've heard many things about this man, how much harm he has done to your saints in Jerusalem. And he said, and here he has authority from the chief priest to bind all who call on your name. But the Lord said to him, Go, for he is a chosen vessel of mine to bear my name before the Gentiles' kings and the children of Israel, for I will show him how many things he must suffer for my name's sake. Look, I know you see Ananias, you see a guy who might kill you. That's what you're seeing. That's my servant. I see a servant. I see a guy who's going to get in there and work for me. He was scared. He was scared at first. Ananias, he wasn't just like, hey, I'm right out the door. He was like, this guy's pretty scared. But God said he'd be with him and work through it, and God did. And God did. And we know how that story ends. So I want to kind of go through this next part. We're running out of time this morning. Tell you the final people we're going to look at in this story. There's some final characters in verses 13 and 14 that really don't need to go without being noticed. Naaman's servants. Naaman's servants in verses 13 and 14. I tell you, Naaman almost got in his own way. He almost tripped over himself right there at the end. Naaman thought, wait a minute. I'm going to go through the Jordan and dip myself 7 times? I thought Elisha was going to come and wave his hand over top of me, and there's a lot of great rivers. I was thinking it's going to be just some magical, wonderful experience, and it's just going to be mystical. I'm going to be able to tell all my friends about it. I can tell you that in some of the studies I've had, that can be a little bit of a trip, an obstacle. So many people are kind of like, in kind of a horrible way, well, that's it. Wait a minute. I thought it was just going to be this, just this utter feeling in what you see in some of these churches that kind of get, who catch the Holy Spirit or whatever, and they start kind of dancing or whatever they do. It's not. It's not there. It was in you. It takes a lot of people. That kind of thought takes a lot of people. Naaman came all this way. Man, I sat down and I studied. And I came all the way. And just water baptism. And I come up. And I'm new. And you mean I just got to continue trucking? Boy, this is a lot of work. I got to continue to stay faithful until death. That can be pretty hard. I'd rather go across the street and, just say once saved, always saved. I'll see you later. It's not here. We know it's a continuation there. And it's a constant fight, and it's a constant battle. And Naaman came all this way and he didn't understand, and he got frustrated. He got frustrated. And remember, all Naaman knew was he had a problem. And the solution surprised him. It was that simple. But the servants were close with Naaman. They knew him. They just settled him down and convinced him to move forward with faith. You know, where they were Israelites. You know, they knew what God could do. Guess what, guys? You want another role? You want another role? Man, I tell you, sometimes stuff gets hard and maybe it's not what we expected it to be. You know, I mean, I know a lot of people who were hoping it's just a clear sailing once they come up out of there. You know, that's the beginning. Well, I mean, by the way, there's a baptistry behind me. But that's the beginning. You know, and sometimes it takes that along the way. Hey, I got you, man. I know. You know, but here's what God said to do. That's all they did. That's the role they played. They said, look, you still have a problem, and you got to continue to fix it. You got to see this through. You got to see this through. And how important that was. You know, how important our servant friends in the church are to us. How important we mean to one another. Man, sometimes that's all we got. And that's okay. That's okay. Most of the people who are baptized into Christ have close relationships in that church. And that's how it should be. You know, they, it might just take an invite by a servant girl. And then maybe a sit down with an Elijah. And then guess what, guys? We're a bunch of servants here. Just all helping one another through it. Got one more just to kind of tie in this, and then the lesson will be yours. Look with me to Acts chapter 18. Acts chapter 18. We're going to read verses 24 through 27. Now a certain Jew named Apollos, born in Alexandria, an eloquent man and a mighty in the Scriptures, came to Ephesus. This man had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and being fervent in spirit, he spoke and taught accurately the things of the Lord, though he knew only the baptism of John. So he began to speak boldly in the synagogue. When Aquila and Priscilla heard him, they took him aside and explained to him the way of God more accurately. And when he desired to cross Achaia, the brethren wrote, exhorting the disciples to receive him. And when he arrived, he greatly helped those who believed through grace. There it is. You want your tie-in? You want to see what maybe that servant just, hey, I get it. You know, maybe you're just a little off on something. That's fine. Been off on something all the time. You know, it takes that. Those people together. That bondage that we have here. The uplifting. The studying together. I mean, guys, this is it. This is what we have in this life. This is who we are. You know, the story wasn't a leprous man. The leprous man was told by God to wash in the river, and he did it. It actually was, I know. But it had so much more. It wasn't quite that simple. It took people in Naaman's life realizing it took Naaman to realize he needed to search for help. But it took a servant girl. It took an Elisha. It took his other servants, his servant, to do that, to play those roles. And he made it. He cleaned himself. He came up anew. Sometimes that's what, who we are. It's what we do. So this morning, maybe you haven't gone down to that water-driven baptism yet. Maybe you still need to wash yourself clean. Or maybe you've just been kind of stumbling and you might need the help of other servants. That's what we are here to do. That's what who we are, and that's what we do. So I would ask you to come forward as we stand and as we sing. Jesus.